Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you again to the ETC team for allowing us to do yet another panel. Today we are going to talk about how to build a product in the age of AI. Part of the reason for which is there's a lot of talk around AI at the minute, and we sort of want to address some of the practicalities of how to do that. So my name is Niall Hendry. I'm from Move.AI. I'm VP of Partnerships, and I'm joined on the panel today by Cam from Disguise. Would you like to introduce yourself, Cam?
Hi everybody, I'm Camilla Cam from Disguise. I work in the product team. I've been working with Niall extensively in the last sort of 6 to 12 months to take to market our invisible real-time markerless mocap solution, and have worked in M&E over the last 20 years.
And we've also got the illustrious Jamie Allen from NVIDIA.
It's the first time I've been called that while we've been here, but thank you, Niall.
Saturday, give you a compliment.
Yeah, so Jamie Allen, I look after the media industries for NVIDIA in EMEA, which includes our ecosystem of amazing partners, which includes the 2 amazing partners that we're joined with here today. So I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Cool, thank you both. So there is a lot of talk around AI and what it means right now in the media and entertainment industry. But I think between the 3 of us, we quite recognize that AI and different forms of machine learning tools have been around for actually quite a long time. My background is in sports. We have been working on computer vision and AI-based tracking tools for almost 15 years. Really articulating how that is AI was probably something we were a bit late to, actually, at my old job. But Cam, in terms of your perspective on where you actually seen uses of AI already in your career, it's not actually a very new thing. It's more of just a new understanding, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the buzz has been about generative AI over the last, 18 months or so, but, there have been AI tools in use in broadcast and M&E for, good 5 years at least in my experience. So, machine learning as a means to do object recognition, recognizing patterns, categorization, that's had all sorts of applications. So if you take, for example, for starters, speech-to-text tools, I think Telestream released one back in 2017. There was an Amazon one released in 2018, and there are a multitude more out there. So that's a good, 5-6 years ago that these speech-to-text tools have been available, and the applications in broadcast and M&E are vast. So, I have a lot of experience developing asset management products, and so speech-to-text for automating subtitling is a massive use case. Once you've got your transcript from video, it enables things like text-driven editing, which can massively speed up workflows, particularly in news, for example, where instead of driving edits by just going through the entire video as an editor, you can drive your rough cut edit by just highlighting the text that's basically generated on the fly during a live capture. And then further building on asset management, that categorization is a massive area that, it has been not shouted out about too much over the last 4 or 5 years, but things like object recognition, celebrity recognition, imagine if you're in a news studio and there's an incident with the celebrity that is Niall Hendry, and, somebody's used the...
Depends what the incident is, right?
All sorts of incidents, so... But, luckily, somebody's used the celebrity recognition service. These are available from cloud providers. So you've already got libraries of images with Niall Hendry already automatically captured. So you can bring up that stock footage, in the click of a button, thanks to categorization by ML.
Yeah, and the thing is, as you say, it's not that widely talked about.
It's
and
not.
I think, we've sort of seen maybe an accelerant. Jamie, from an NVIDIA perspective, with the tools that NVIDIA build, obviously a lot of AI tools, inference, different technologies are built on top of that. But have you seen an acceleration, is it fair to say, in terms of adoption of AI understanding in the market?
I think I completely agree that the AI and machine learning is pervasive in the tools that the media industry use now. You can't walk around a show like IBC and not see machine learning capabilities and AI tools that are now being embedded into many of NVIDIA's partners and things like that, who are using the foundational building blocks that we create. I think the big shift that's happening now is that organizations are, I mean, AI is now a board conversation for most enterprises, and that includes media enterprises. As it becomes a table stakes conversation to be understood, not just within R&D and not just within like partner product development, but as an organization, large broadcasters, large media agencies, they need to understand AI fundamentally. And that is then pushing not just them as organizations and end users of your tools to understand AI better. That allows them to understand what you're doing, and you have a more educated conversation with them. It's also pushing the industry to develop new and better tools faster, because their expectations are accelerated. So not only is their understanding of AI now becoming greater, but their expectations of what their vendors and what their partners are going to deliver to them is being accelerated, which is really exciting, because it allows us to collaborate really closely at a senior executive level with these media organizations to understand what they want for their businesses, and then work with the ecosystem, people like yourselves, to create those products together, and then that cycle of growth will be really, really exciting.
That's an interesting point I want to dig into there, actually, as well, around the executive side of things. Like, obviously, AI can be quite a catch-all term for a bunch of different underlying technologies. From actually your perspective, Jamie, at NVIDIA, like, what's the best way you find to sometimes explain that away to people who go, we need AI, but actually don't know either what they need or actually fundamentally what they're asking for?
I think very quickly you move the conversation to what's the business growth plans? What outcomes do you want from technology? AI is going to perhaps deliver some of those things, but your decisions around infrastructure, your decisions around partnerships that you have with that wide technology ecosystem, that's going to help you leverage those capabilities. AI is not, it's maths at the end of the day, right? It's really good maths, it's decision engines, it's logic, it's very useful for lots and lots of things, but it's not useful if it isn't taken in with a huge consideration of the rest of the pipeline around the AI tool. The AI model is one part of a solution, right? It's not the product, and I guess that's a good segue into.
I was going to say that's a brilliant segue.
Completely natural there,
Keep it going.
And that's the important thing here, right? Is that you don't build an AI model, you build a product, and that's something that I think at an executive understanding level is really important that they are now understanding, is that, yeah, we can internally build an AI model, but we need a platform team, we need an application team. We can work with partners who build an AI product, but we need to know what the outcome of their product is and not just how good their AI model is.
Exactly, and I think that's one thing I really want to dig into next is, like, I think one thing that I think we have to explain away as a company with AI in our name is that AI in itself is not a product. I mean, fundamentally, the way our pipeline works is we take in video, we run pose estimation, we use some computer vision algorithms to reconstruct the scene, but then everything else on top of that is layered advanced mathematics, it's front end, it's iOS development, then it's kicking out file outputs, right? So AI in itself is one part, as you say, it's a tool to enable a different sort of user ecosystem or experience. But Cam, in terms of product development, and there's a couple of threads to this I think we were talking about earlier. One, as a product manager, how do you think about integrating AI into products? And secondly, how do you think that AI can actually progress things like engineering and product management in itself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just picking up on the point about the product, and totally agree that AI in itself isn't the product, because just working with you over the last 6 to 12 months, the bulk of the work has been about how we take it to market. How do we get product market fit? What are the use cases? How do we price it? How do you support it? Those are the things that turn that innovative idea into a product. And so all those good product management practices that you would do for any kind of product, they still absolutely apply. And I think the same applies on the engineering front as well. Just because it's got AI in it, it doesn't mean that there's suddenly no need for a good architecture or good design. So an example of that is, this year at Disguise, we integrated with Verlingo, which is a platform that generates nerfs. And that integration was done super quickly because we already had in place a framework for integrating content engines into our platform called RenderStream. And so the guys at Verlingo, who are the experts in nerfs, were able to just quickly plug into that software architecture. And so essentially what I'm saying is, just because it's AI, there's no substitute for good product management, good engineering. You still have to do that to the end. And actually maybe even more so because, a lot of the AI tools over the last 5 years or so have been focused on productivity and efficiency gains for existing workflows. It's all about speeding up what people do today. But the exciting thing for me as a product manager is actually not just how you can speed up something that people do today, but how can you then open up new use cases. So with invisible real-time markerless mocap, like what it does is really cool, but what's more cool is what the customers who buy it will actually do with it.
Yeah, and I think that's been an interesting challenge that I think we've found. And I think like articulating, I remember speaking to Jamie ages ago, I was like, Move.AI is really cool, but like explain what you can do with it. Yeah. Like, and what I can do with it is like very much a part, as you said, the productization and the marketing around it. But like, I think like that's also equally important, because fundamentally you go, this is really cool, but if it's not valuable to me, then what's the point? And I guess to throw to you, Jamie, in terms of like, because you see a hell of a lot of different products that pass under your radar, how do you find that the market, in terms of when people bring new AI-based products to market, like, do you see challenges in people articulating the value there?
I think sometimes, definitely. I think as you were pointing out there, right? They sometimes can be too much value placed on the AI part of something rather than what the ultimate outcome of a product or tool is. I think we also see AI applied to lots of things because it's a very, it's, I wouldn't say a hype cycle right now, because I do not believe that AI is in a hype cycle. I believe it's
as you said, it's pervasive, right? It's been around for quite a long time.
It is already there, and I think but what we're seeing now is that it comes back to that understanding. Yeah. It's becoming a lot harder for companies to get away with throwing AI on something and it being picked up just because of that, because people will start to ask, what's the value of the AI? What's the AI model that's being used in there? And I think it's a really interesting change in the companies or the market's understanding of what AI means in a product, and how that's then supported and developed long term. There's a lot more understanding that's needed if that's how you're going to position the product. And obviously conversations we've had with you guys and with end users, it's been very clear that as an organization, you guys can explain that. You can explain the AI roadmap, you can explain your product information at a very deep technical level, which is exactly how companies are now expecting to be spoken to when they're talking about an AI product.
And I think here's a challenge. Do you think though, that's a good point, like we built from the ground up with AI and built on top of it, right? But like there are challenges when people try and retrofit or like integrate AI into existing products. Like, have you seen that? And I think, Cam, from your perspective, like let's go this way. How challenging is that to then retrofit AI into a product and try and sort of add it into a workflow? And then I guess the second question to that then, Jamie, is like, have you seen that done successfully? And
yeah, it's a tricky one, because I think the answer is probably it depends. Yeah. I mean, so take, for example, DLSS from NVIDIA, deep learning supersampling. That's something that you can plug in very easily to speed up frame rates on Unreal Engine, for example. And it's something that we advocate people using on Disguise, but it's very non-invasive, right? It's something you can configure and turn on, which probably gets back to my point earlier about good software architecture. And then other things like workflow. There are SaaS services out there that you can call for AI services. And then I suppose other aspects is how can you use AI to improve like training and documentation? It's so easy now to use AI to like suck in a load of data and then have users just ask chatbot questions. But then in terms of kind of retrofitting that in, I guess a lot of products are just based fundamentally like invisible on AI, and that is a ground up thing. So yeah, it's a tricky question.
Different ways. So Jamie, what's your perspective
different ways of skinning it?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned DLSS, because it's a great example of our efforts and our goals in this area are to make these processes as easy as possible. Right? We create frameworks and tools and SDKs that will accelerate that integration of AI into someone's product or into the tools, but it still has to be really well considered in how it's done, not just from a technical point of view, but from a user experience point of view. Our friends at Adobe right now are doing amazing work on integrating Firefly into their products like Photoshop and Premiere. You can tell how much consideration is being taken to how do our users today use these tools, and let's not give them a brand new interface. Let's not give them something that they're unfamiliar with. Let's supercharge what they're doing already. And I think that's exactly the combination of disguise and move, right? You aren't moving too far out of someone who's experienced with using disguise, or even someone who's experienced with using Move.AI. But that collaboration creates a very the onboarding to that new technology is incredibly smooth because you've had that consideration throughout the process. And that's a really important thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think the Adobe example is brilliant because you say, like, there's always a need to innovate as technology companies and vendors, but like doing it in a considered way that meets the market needs is paramount to doing that, right, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, actually, on the innovation front, there's one aspect of AI that I think I've seen over the last sort of 6 months ago from a product management perspective that has been quite interesting, where with ChatGPT, for example, you can ask it to write code for you very easily. And what I've seen at Disguise is actually it's enabling more people in the organization to actually knock up a quick prototype of something, and come to the product team and say, look at this thing that I just made. Isn't it really cool? Like, is there a product idea in that? And so in that case, it's not necessarily AI is in the product, but AI has enabled more people to participate in coming up with ideas, prototyping, not necessarily waiting for the engineering team to make this thing, because with the help of ChatGPT and other tools, people can just knock these things up without being a programmer. So that's, I think, a really amazing aspect.
It certainly opens up accessibility, right, Jamie?
I think this is one of those the big shift now with the power of language models, the power of the amount of the speed at which this is developing. It moves AI from being just a part of a product to something that you are collaborating with in your business on a day-to-day basis as well. And that's a big shift from where we were with building AI product before. So now companies that may not be actually building AI product, they're going to use AI to help create the products they're making anyway, such as code creation, such as what we're seeing with like material creation and texture creation and a 3D workflow. But I think there is a lot of learning and understanding that's needed around the use of these large language model tools. I think a lot of the next evolution of this from a product point of view will be bringing more context for specific markets. I heard recently from a SVP of data science for a very large broadcaster, and he was talking about how amazing these new language models are, but they aren't going to help them create or understand how to improve their scripts for a particular show because they don't know that show. So they need to then add the context, and then they need to understand, where are we going to run that AI training, because we don't want to give our IP to a public-facing, free service. So then comes back to what we were talking about earlier, the executive understanding of where's our risk level for utilization of public services versus when do we need to bring things in-house and build, or when do we need to work with a partner who's going to help us to create something custom for this part of what we want to do. And then for these other things, we can use public-facing AI, language model tools and things like that.
That's an interesting point, actually, around the sort of the custom element of things, or things that are maybe potentially bespoke to a specific business. Like, how does that, in practice, as a vendor like NVIDIA, how does that then work as opposed to something that's very public and open? How do you approach them with a partner doing something that's more tailored around AI-specific tools?
I think there is a huge amount of really, really powerful, what we call foundational AI models available today. Obviously, GPT-4 and OpenAI is a well-known one, but you also have a huge open source community. You can go to places like Hugging Face and GitHub and get some AI foundational models that are commercially usable now. And this is data transparency, and knowing what data the foundational models were trained on is a very important thing that legal counsels and CTOs, CIOs are now looking to understand. But then once you have a team or a partner who can help you take those foundational models and add your own information, add your own IP, and do that in a place and on a system that you're comfortable with putting that data into, what you get out of that is something that is much more contextualized to what you wanted it to do in the first place. But then we still come back to that process of that isn't the product. That still needs to be added into a user interface, into a pipeline, into business systems, into CRM data, into content management that allows you to integrate it with the data you want it to help you interrogate. And that comes back to building product with AI is not just about the AI, it's about the product.
Cam?
So you mentioned about the legal counsel. Are you seeing SVPs or whoever being concerned about the legal aspects? Because obviously there's a lot of lawsuits in progress at the moment about generative AI, and it's still kind of, being where that ends is still to be determined.
I think the adoption of any new technology in any size of enterprise organization will always have due diligence. It always should do, right? These are standard processes. When they're looking at contracts for any new piece of software, when they're looking at anything where a company may have risk associated to adoption, it's going to need consideration. And I think with AI, legal counsels in large enterprises are taking a very, very pragmatic, sensible approach to this, and they're learning very quickly about the right questions to ask. What's your data policy? What's the ethical data sourcing that you've done here? And all of these things are really important for companies to understand when they're looking at, especially with language model products, which ones that they can use maybe for ideation, we can use this non-commercially, and which ones that we can use to build commercial products with. There's a very important conversation for them to have there.
That's one that we get quite a lot in terms of, because we take in video and we turn that into animation data, but fundamentally a lot of that video is based on their IP, right? Or it could have actors in it, etc. So a real consideration we get a lot is, well, what do you do with the video at a base level? And then with the AI, when it runs, what do you get from it? Who owns it? And as a result of that, which part of the pipeline, who owns what, is often something that we really have to explain away as to saying, this is fundamentally our IP, this is your IP. There's a clear delineation in the middle, but it is definitely an educational process at times to do that. But you're right, in terms of due diligence, you're seeing it's absolutely necessary, but you're seeing more and more, I guess, articulated questions around what bits lie where right now. And that's sort of the here and now. So I wanted to throw a little bit out into the future. There's obviously, in the market today, there is a lot of fear around things like large language models, the writers' strikes. We've got the actors' strikes as well, worrying about their own data rights. I can equate that to sports rights quite easily, what I'll get into in a minute. But in terms of, I guess, Jamie, you said hype cycle. There is a bit of a hype cycle. I think there is, as we say, AI has been prevalent for a long time, but there is a bit of a hype cycle at the minute. Where do you see that leveling out? So we've been through Web3, we've been through Metaverse, we're back in AI now. Where does, I think this is a completely different proposition, but where do you see the sort of, where and when do you see that sort of understanding and adoption sort of just being just consistent, as opposed to the general fear sometimes there is at the minute?
I mean, there should always be a healthy trepidation of new technologies.
Yeah.
But I think the speed at which we're seeing right now enterprises wanting to adopt these tools and technologies, I see it becoming pervasive very, very quickly. The use of these new language model capabilities. For a lot of people, it already is, right? I mean, we are encouraged at NVIDIA to use these tools where it makes sense to use these tools.
As are we.
Many large enterprises today are telling their organizations, telling their business leaders, find where you can make efficiency gains now and make a plan for how you're going to adopt these things quickly into the future. I mean, you talk about those technology hype cycles of the last few years, Metaverse didn't go away. It just became virtual worlds and immersive experiences.
And then people just understood it better as something that already existed again.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly didn't go away for disguise, right? The idea of Metaverse and immersive experiences is an incredibly exciting thing. And then obviously Apple have brought that even further forward with spatial computing, with vision, and that's going to completely change the landscape of some of those requirements. We're seeing a huge amount of interest in the brand space and the agency space around that as well. And then also they're still connecting these things back to tokenized media, to Web3 technologies. Those things haven't really gone away. They're going to be there for a long time. And I think when we include the idea of AI being able to generate some of those experiences, being able to generate 3D worlds. One of the issues that there was with mass adoption of metaverse technologies or immersive experiences was the lack of scale in creating those worlds. And now we're going to see the popular engines, the popular platforms like Roblox and Fortnite and others start to use AI to help expand their worlds. And then that will then come into, I'm not speaking for your product development, but the ability to add those tools into a disguised platform to create those 3D worlds. So I think the the leveling off of sort of language models, this phase of AI understanding and adoption. It's going to take a while before it levels off and it's not accelerating. I think it's going to be on a pretty steady curve of adoption for a while.
Certain. And like, again, to segue from Jamie's point there, in terms of product development then, in terms of how do you foresee that sort of affecting the next, I hate saying 5 years into the future, but let's say the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So just picking up on that and some of the points that you made, Jamie, in terms of fear versus opportunity, there's a lot of fear about how AI can take jobs, but, there's also opportunity there to make things more successful than they have been. So if I give a concrete example, virtual production has also been another thing that's gone through a bit of a hype cycle, and for many it hasn't quite been the kind of cost saver for filmmaking and TV production that people once thought, because one of the things that is a key factor is the cost of the content creation. So actually by bringing in AI tools to help with that, to more easily create 3D worlds or to help with creation of 2.5D scenes, to do AI-based rotoscoping, that will reduce the cost of the content creation. So suddenly, VP or in-camera VFX will become more accessible, which is, to indie productions, to more budget productions. And that's something that, we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 years, about how VP is great for cost saving and it's going to, open it up to everybody. But actually, AI tools can really help that. So it's a kind of indirect effect, which will open up a lot of creativity in film. So it's not directly AI, but it's indirectly AI opening up a whole new industry.
Yeah, definitely. Like across the board, I know it's a very overused term, but like the democratization or accessibility to tools, I think, has definitely become more prevalent and allow people to create more and more easily. That was brilliant. Thank you. We're almost out of time, but I wanted to throw up any questions in the audience. Does anyone have any questions around use of AI in products?